a patch to prevent your peanut allergy, fake drug discounts made by the president, and Ozempic in a pill? I'm Matty C, and this is Big Drama in Big Pharma. What's up, nerds? Now, if you're new here, welcome. This is the weekly series where we dish all of the juicy details in the world of drug discovery. Now, with Big Pharma drama slowing down significantly over the holiday season, these stories will cover up until December 23rd, 2025. But don't worry, there's enough drama in here to last a lifetime. First up, let's talk about the heavyweight champions of making people lighter. Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly are turning their blockbuster obesity drugs into a pill form. That's right, no more weekly jabs. Just one pill every morning before you head off to work. As a fellow nerd, you've probably heard lots about glucagon-like peptide-1 receptor agonists, or GLP-1s. They're the drug that binds to receptors in your brain and your gut to reduce food intake and slow the rate of digestion so that you can more easily drop some pounds. Up to 29% in some cases. If you're a sucky baby like me, you don't really with the idea of needles. And if I did take GLP-1s, having to take a needle every single week in order to see the success wouldn't really be my thing. A pill would be much easier. But there's a catch. Taking a pill means that the drug has to endure your stomach acid. But peptide-based drugs, like Novo Nordisk's wegovy, are rapidly denatured and rapidly destabilized in your stomach acid, long before they can reach your bloodstream and do any work. Wegovy injections, however, bypass the stomach, meaning they do not get degraded and can last longer and are more effective, which is why they've been king for treating weight loss for so long. That is until very recently when Novo Nordisk found a way to stabilize their peptide-based drug in a pill form, formulating their GLP-1 receptor agonist with a very specialized, very strong buffer. They're able to stabilize enough peptide molecules to get through the stomach and get to their intended targets. Their most recent clinical trial showed that with a dose of 25 milligrams of wegovy pill, patients with obesity could lose up to 17% of their body weight after 2 years of treatment. Just imagine, you're currently 300 pounds, but you could lose over 50 pounds by taking this pill, eating healthy, and mixing in a little bit of exercise. Well, not so fast, because there is a significant biological cost to paying this convenience fee. Novo Nordisk had to drastically increase their weekly dose. Taking one wegovy pill every day for a week gives a total dose of 175 milligrams of active component, but the injectable version, only 2.4 milligrams in one single injection for 1 week. That means the pill needs almost 73 times more active component just to get the same or even slightly worse results for weight loss. Now, for many patients who hate needles, this might still be worth it. But Novo Nordisk doesn't really love the idea of the financial and time cost that goes into making 73 times more drug for a single patient. Ironically enough, one of Novo Nordisk's biggest competitors, Eli Lilly, has actually found a really good middle ground for their version of a weight loss pill. Rather than having patients choose either injectable or pill forms, they've combined the two. Patients took weekly needles for the first year. And then the following year, they took Lilly's pill called orforglipron. This is why we have marketable name. Orforglipron once a day. Patients lost over 20 kilos in that first year. By the end of the second year, they successfully maintained that weight loss by just taking the pill. In most cases, they didn't lose extra weight, but they also didn't put many pounds back on. At first glance, these data don't seem quite as sexy as Novo Nordisk's first trial, but they are massively important. Approximately half of the people who are taking GLP-1s to manage their weight don't adhere to their treatment plan after the first year. This type of combined therapy addresses something that is so often overlooked. It's not just about how big that weight loss is. It's about developing habits that keep that weight off. And that includes diet and exercise. It's about balance. Now, since I am a certified hater, there are still a few things that I don't absolutely love about this whole situation. One is that this race and this obsession over getting a weight loss pill has stunted the development of other potentially life-saving treatments. For example, Novo Nordisk was ready to go all in on this dual-acting GLP-1 injection that would improve on basically everything. Lower doses that actually last longer and had way fewer side effects than what most people see in current GLP-1s. But they had to put this drug on the back burner to focus on this oral wegovy instead. Likely because there was so much competition for this pill and because it's easier to turn a profit. And look, I get it. Pharma's still a business and you need money to make new innovative treatments. But if they're only focusing on obesity and weight loss in order to make these profits, What other innovations are you stunting in the process? But let me know what you think in the comments below. Speaking of fucking with the innovations for the profits, President Trump has made deals with 9 of the biggest pharma companies on the planet to reduce the cost of their drugs for American citizens, putting them in line with other countries who have reduced drug costs. And in return, these companies will avoid many of the pharmaceutical-specific tariffs for 3 years, while gaining other company-specific incentives. And the experts absolutely fucking hate this. But this sounds like a win-win. Patients don't have to pay as much money for prescription meds, and pharma companies don't have to succumb to tariffs. Why would they be such haters for something that sounds so good on paper? That's because Donnie T is making this paper look like it's a massive, flashy billboard with beautiful bright lights and big fancy fireworks shooting out the back, when in reality it's just a crusty old Christmas card that your nonna got at the dollar store. On this paper, we have a list of the many reasons why glitter is not gold. Most of these price reductions were for drugs that already offer rebates, or were nearing the end of their patent, meaning cheaper generics were on the way soon. You only receive this lower favored price if you pay out of pocket. In most cases, it's still cheaper to co-pay through your insurance, meaning that this doesn't actually help most Americans. These supposedly big bad tariffs had so many exemptions that basically nobody was scared of them. All in all, Wall Street analysts do not expect significant impact on sales or profits for pharma companies. But most concerningly is that these backroom deals might influence how quickly these companies get new drugs through the pipeline. So for example, the same day that Merck announced lower prices on their established drugs, they got a voucher for 2 new drugs, reducing their FDA review time from 10 months to just 2 months. Now that last point is a little bit skeptical. Neither Merck nor the White House have made a statement about this, but it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to put the pieces together. And this is honestly the main issue. There's been basically zero transparency in how any of these negotiations or how any of these deals were actually made. Not to mention Trump and honestly the entire MAHA movement is based around this idea that there's going to be a more transparent healthcare in America. Which I don't know about you, but this doesn't sound very transparent. I feel like the absolute last thing that we need as a society is to have less transparency and less restrictions around the therapeutics that go into our bodies that are trying to be used to treat the diseases that we have. And this isn't just for Americans. As a Canadian myself, I know that Health Canada makes a lot of their approval decisions based on what the American FDA does. If there's foul play happening in the FDA, that could affect billions more people worldwide. It'll be so easy for pharma companies to say, well, the FDA just approved it, they're the global leader in pharma, why can't the EMA or Health Canada approve it? It's more than just a publicity stunt that seemingly reduces drug prices for Americans. It's collusion, it's corruption, it's utter crap. Let's put the corruption and the collusion to the side for a second and focus on other quick fixes in the world of pharma this week in a classic Matty speed round. Within 24 hours, 2 different pharma companies had very promising clinical trial results for the same biological target, a systemic inflammation marker known as TYK2. But interestingly, they were used to treat 2 different diseases. Takeda's phase 3 trial looked at psoriasis, while Galapagos treated dermatomyositis in a phase 2. And while the flexibility of one target is great for both, it's still unclear how this might create unintended competition between the 2. After almost 30 years, Cytokinetics finally has their first FDA approval. Known as Mycorrhiza, it prevents a hereditary heart condition that prevents the heart from adequately pumping blood. It actually has more use cases and less restrictions than its only other competitor in the market, from pharma giant Bristol Myers Squibb. Not bad for a first rodeo. A global health coalition helped Moderna raise over $50 million to develop a new vaccine for H5 bird flus. And if approved, there are already contingencies baked into this funding to provide lower and middle income countries with affordable access to the vaccine. This is a massive win considering all of their funding had previously been pulled in January 2025. Suck it, anti-vaxxers. And finally, I don't like to laugh at bankruptcies, but this one's pretty funny. Biotech VC firm Appletree Partners recently filed for bankruptcy after having a very long legal dispute with their very suspicious billionaire backers for, well, not financially backing them. Now, usually when this happens, the companies that are funded by this firm would die too, but in a rare twist, the courts ruled that $97 million were owed to those companies to keep them afloat. A happy ending where the innovators get to keep their money and only the rich guys get hurt? In this economy? Our first 2 stories of this video focused on greed. But now let's focus on the grind. These next 2 drugs are special not just because they work or because of how they work, but because they thrived in a system that was designed to kill them off. Both innovations recently reached major milestones to prove their long-lasting efficacy. One is a twice-yearly medication for asthma, while the other is a patch to prevent anaphylaxis for peanut allergies. Let's start with the asthma. As many of you know, most inhalers and other anti-asthmatic medications need to be taken regularly and over a long period of time. But pharma giant GSK claim that 65% of patients that take biologics for asthma don't stick with their treatment after the first year. But unlike GLP-1s, not sticking with their treatment plan greatly increases their risk of hospitalizations for the 2 million Americans that have severe asthma. So GSK developed depemokimab. It basically puts the immune system's overactive panic button on do not disturb mode for 6 months. It's an antibody that targets interleukin 5, or IL-5, which is one of the main proteins that tells your body to make eosinophils. Eosinophils are white blood cells that cause inflammation in certain parts of the lungs that are indicative of asthma. So by blocking IL-5 activation and therefore eosinophil production, depemokimab keeps pulmonary inflammation low and allows asthma patients to breathe normally for longer. What matters most is that by lasting longer, patients could more reliably stick to their treatment schedule and hospitalizations could be significantly reduced. And similarly, this second innovation also uses a biologic to work its magic. Introducing the Viaskin peanut patch. Think of it kind of like if a vaccine and a nicotine patch had a baby. Here's what I mean. By exposing the immune cells in the skin to small amounts of peanut protein, you train the body to recognize the peanuts as friend, not foe, to prevent an allergic reaction. Once the immune system is trained, it stops freaking out and significantly reduces the risk of anaphylaxis when actually getting that nut. Now, it won't let you eat an entire jar of Skippy, but it might stop you from dying if you accidentally smooch someone who just ate a Snickers. They're still waiting for final FDA approval, and there's no word on whether or not they would need additional doses or additional patches as people get older, but the 35% increase in allergen tolerance in a study that had almost 650 kids aged 4 to 7 looks really promising. In both of these cases, we see innovations that can save lives for patient populations that are put in danger in otherwise unassuming conditions. Playing soccer on the playground or being near PB&J should never put your life at risk. And now there are 2 very promising options to prevent or at least lower any of these unnecessary worries. Also, shout out to my old roommate Mitch, who had a severe peanut allergy but still never batted an eye when I was having peanut butter on the daily. All right, Mitch, I love you. Thank you so much. Both of these examples also had to overcome significant administrative bullshit to be where they are now. For example, the peanut patch was actually denied by the FDA back in 2020. Just because there wasn't enough data that the patch was adhering to the skin properly. So they went back to the drawing board and luckily came out on top. Meanwhile, the asthma market is so saturated with other treatments that it would be easy for GSK to say, screw it, we're going to focus on something else. Instead, they made a therapeutic that requires fewer doses, almost single-handedly debunking the whole they're trying to keep you sick so they can make more money off you theory. Now, I'm sure they care about the profits. Like, of course they do. Pharma's a business. But hopefully these are good examples to show that some innovations are done because that's what patients need. Not every single pharma company is obsessed with backroom, borderline illegal deals and only focusing on the profits. Now, if you're interested in other examples of how certain companies can beat the big pharma system against all odds, click on this video where we talk about how a charity got an FDA approval for the first time ever. If you want links to the original articles of all the things we talked about today, links are in the description below. While you're down there, be free to give this video a like, helps to pass it on to other nerds who are interested in big pharma, and hit subscribe so you don't miss next week's version of the big drama. But that's all for me today. Thank you for stopping by, and you stay classy, nerds.